The massive space station hung in the void between stars like a metal city floating in darkness. Nexus Prime stretched 4 kilometers in every direction, its surface covered with docking bays, communication arrays, and the flags of dozens of alien species. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, where civilizations from across the galaxy came to trade, negotiate, and decide the fate of entire worlds. Ambassador Tejo pressed his face against the small window of the human transport ship. He had never seen anything like it. The station was 10 times larger than any structure humans had ever built. Lights twinkled across its surface like stars, and massive ships moved in and out of its docking bays like insects around a hive. "First time seeing it?" asked Dr. Yoongi as she floated over to join him. The artificial gravity on their small ship was weak, and they had to hold on to handrails to keep from drifting around the cabin. "Yes," Tejo replied, unable to hide his amazement. "I knew it would be big, but this is incredible. How do they even power something this massive?" Dr. Yoon smiled. She was the team's xenobiologist responsible for studying alien lifeforms and understanding their behavior. Her job would be crucial in the coming negotiations. "According to our intelligence, they harvest energy directly from stars. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours." The transport ship shuddered slightly as it entered the station's docking bay. Through the window, they could see alien workers moving around in environmental suits. Some had 4 arms, others had tentacles instead of legs, and a few seemed to glow with their own light. "Remember the protocol," Tejo said to his small team, as they prepared to disembark. "We are representing all of humanity today. Everything we do and say will determine whether Earth gets accepted into the Galactic Council or remains isolated forever." The docking bay doors opened with a hiss, and the humans got their first taste of alien air. It smelled strange, like metal and ozone, but it was breathable. Their hosts had made sure of that much. A delegation of aliens waited for them on the platform. The leader was tall and reptilian, with green scales covering his body and yellow eyes that seemed to look right through them. This was Council Leader Veltar of the Vorthok species, one of the most powerful races in the galaxy. Behind him stood representatives from other species. There were the Kalari insect-like creatures with multiple arms and compound eyes that reflected the station's lights. The Zilani looked almost human, except for their blue skin and the fact that they were twice as tall as any person. There were others too, species that had no names in human language, and forms that seemed impossible. 2 Earthborn eyes. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," Veltar said in perfect English. His voice was deep and carried a slight hiss. "I am Council Leader Veltar. We have been expecting you." Tejo stepped forward and bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that had been debated for weeks by Earth's diplomatic corps. "Thank you for receiving us, Council Leader. I am Ambassador Tejo, representing the planet Earth and the human species. We are honored to be here." Veltar's yellow eyes studied the human delegation carefully. There were only 5 humans in total, a tiny group compared to the dozens of aliens surrounding them. Dr. Yoongi stood beside the ambassador, her tablet ready to document everything they encountered. The other 3 team members were military advisors and communication specialists. "Follow me," Veltar said after a long pause. "The council is eager to meet you." As they walked through the station's corridors, Dr. Yoongi noticed something strange. Whenever they passed groups of aliens, the creatures would stop what they were doing and stare at the humans. But it wasn't curiosity in their eyes. It was something else, something that made her uncomfortable. "They seem nervous around us," she whispered to Tejo. The ambassador had noticed it too. Aliens would step aside when the human group approached, creating more space than seemed necessary. Some even moved to the opposite side of the corridor entirely. "Perhaps they're just not used to seeing humans," Tejo replied quietly. But he wasn't convinced. There was something in the way the aliens looked at them that reminded him of how rabbits acted around wolves back on Earth. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in a massive circle that could hold thousands of beings. Most of the seats were empty, but representatives from the major species were present. The humans were led to a small platform in the center of the circle, where they stood like specimens under examination. Veltar took his place at the highest seat and activated a translation device that would allow all species to understand each other. His voice echoed through the chamber as he began the formal proceedings. "We gather today to consider the application of the species known as humans for membership in the Galactic Council," he announced. "They come from a world they call Earth, located in what we designate as Sector 7G of the Outer Rim." Murmurs rippled through the assembled aliens. Dr. Yoongi noticed that many of them seemed surprised by something, though she couldn't tell what. "Before we proceed," continued a Kalari representative, its compound eyes reflecting light as it turned toward the humans, "we must address certain concerns about your species." Tejo stepped forward. "What concerns your planet?" the Kalari said, its voice buzzing like an insect. "Is what we classify as a Category 5 death world. The gravity is extreme. The atmosphere is corrosive, and it harbors some of the most dangerous life forms we have ever cataloged. How did your species not only survive but develop technology? Dr. Yunji blinked in surprise. She had never thought of Earth as particularly dangerous. It was just home. I'm not sure I understand, she said. Earth seems normal to us. The aliens, in the chamber, began talking among themselves in excited voices. Veltar raised a clawed hand for silence. Perhaps you don't realize, he said slowly, that your world would kill most of the species in this chamber within hours. The predators alone would be enough to wipe out entire civilizations. Predators, Tejo asked. You mean like lions and tigers? The reaction was immediate. Several aliens actually moved backward in their seats. Others began speaking rapidly in their own languages. Dr. Yunji realized they had said something wrong, but she couldn't figure out what. You speak of apex predators as if they are common, whispered a Zolani representative, its blue face pale with fear. How many such creatures exist on your world? Dr. Yunji thought about it for a moment. Thousands of species, I suppose. But they're not that dangerous if you're careful. Humans have learned to coexist with them. The chamber fell completely silent. Veltar's yellow eyes narrowed as he stared at the human delegation. Coexist, he repeated slowly. Your species coexists with thousands of apex predators? Well, yes, Tejo said, becoming increasingly confused by the aliens' reactions. We've been doing it for millions of years. It's how we evolved. Dr. Yunji suddenly understood what was happening. These aliens weren't just surprised by humanity's survival on Earth. They were terrified by it. She looked around the chamber with new eyes and realized that every species present had the body language of prey animals. Wide-set eyes for detecting threats, quick movements, nervous energy. Council leader, she said carefully, may I ask what kinds of predators exist on your worlds? Veltar was quiet for a long time before answering. There are none, he said. Finally, predators were eliminated from our worlds long ago. They were too dangerous to allow to exist. The implications hit both humans like a physical blow. These aliens hadn't evolved alongside predators. They had never learned to deal with creatures that hunted for survival. To them, humans weren't just another species seeking membership in their club. They were living nightmares from a world that should have been impossible. I think, Veltar said slowly, his voice carrying a note of barely controlled fear, that we need to discuss your application much more carefully than we originally planned. As the session was called to reassess, Dr. Yunji caught Tejo's eye. They both realized that this first contact was going to be far more complicated than anyone on Earth had imagined. They weren't just representing humanity to a group of advanced civilizations. They were introducing the concept of apex predators to a galaxy that had spent millennia trying to forget such things existed. 3 months had passed since the awkward first meeting at Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council had given humanity a probationary period and assigned them to explore Sector 12 Delta, a remote region of space that they described as suitable for developing species. Captain Jinwoo had volunteered to lead the exploration mission aboard the human vessel Aurora, a ship that seemed tiny compared to the massive alien constructs they had seen at the station. Captain, we're approaching the first system in our assigned sector, reported Communications Officer Soman from her station on the bridge. Her screens showed a red dwarf star surrounded by several planets, none of which appeared on any of the Galactic Council's charts as inhabited worlds. Jinwoo studied the readings with interest. Any signs of life? The third planet shows atmospheric composition suitable for carbon-based life forms, answered Engineer Haeyoung as she monitored the ship's sensors. But there's something strange about the electromagnetic readings. They're much stronger than they should be for a planet that size. Dr. Yunji looked up from her research station, where she had been cataloging the biological samples they had collected from previous worlds. What kind of electromagnetic activity? It's like the whole planet is one big electrical storm, Haeyoung replied, frowning at her instruments. I've never seen readings like this before. Jinwoo made his decision quickly. Take us into orbit. Let's see what we're dealing with. As the Aurora approached the planet, they got their first clear view of what the Galactic Council had assigned as their territory. The world below was covered in massive storm systems that crackled with constant lightning. The electromagnetic activity was so intense that it interfered with their communications and made their instruments struggle to function properly. This is incredible, Dr. Yunji said as she watched the lightning storms rage across continents. The electrical activity would fry most electronic equipment within minutes. So why did the Council send us here? Salman asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. Before anyone could answer, their sensors detected something unexpected. There was a structure on the planet's surface, clearly artificial, and somehow still functioning despite the constant electrical bombardment. There's someone down there, Haeyoung announced with surprise. The structure is giving off a distress signal. Jinwoo didn't hesitate. Can we get through those storms? The Aurora's shielding should hold, but it won't be comfortable. Haeyoung replied, and we'll have to land close to the structure. Our communications will be almost useless once we enter the atmosphere. Do it, Jinwoo ordered. Someone needs help. The descent through the planet's atmosphere was unlike anything the human crew had ever experienced. Lightning struck their ship dozens of times, and the electromagnetic interference made their instruments scream with warnings. But the Aurora held together, and they managed to land near the alien structure. Through the viewport, they could see a small building that looked like it had been built to withstand the constant electrical storms. It was made of some kind of metal that seemed to absorb the lightning strikes rather than being damaged by them. The air is breathable, Dr. Yunji reported after checking their environmental readings. High oxygen content. Actually, but the electrical activity out there could kill us if we're not careful. Jinwoo suited up, along with Haeyoung and Dr. Yunji. Their environmental suits were designed to handle various alien atmospheres, but none of them had been tested in conditions like this. They made their way across the short distance to the alien structure, moving quickly between lightning strikes. The door to the building was unlocked, and they found themselves in what appeared to be a small shelter. Inside, they discovered 3 aliens, unlike any they had seen before. These creatures were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed designed for low-light conditions. They were clearly weak and malnourished. "Please," one of the aliens said in broken English, apparently having learned some human language from intercepted transmissions. "Help us, we are Zilani. Ship crashed here many cycles ago. Cannot leave." Dr. Yunji immediately began examining the aliens while Jinwoo and Haeyoung assessed their situation. The shelter was well built, but clearly running out of power. The aliens had managed to survive by eating some kind of plant that grew in the electrical storms, but they were slowly starving. "How long have you been here?" Jinwoo asked. 47 cycles, the alien replied weakly. "Since before humans discovered space travel, we sent distress signals, but no one comes. This sector is forbidden." "Forbidden?" Dr. Yunji looked up from her medical examination. "What do you mean?" The Zilani alien's large eyes filled with something that looked like fear. "This is Graveyard Sector, place where dangerous species are sent to die. No one survives worlds like this. Council thought we were eliminated long ago." The implications hit the humans immediately. The Galactic Council hadn't assigned them to a territory suitable for developing species. They had sent humanity to a dumping ground where failed civilizations were left to die. "What makes these worlds so dangerous?" Haeyoung asked as she examined the alien technology that had kept the shelter running. "Everything," the Zilani replied. "Electrical storms kill most technology. Acid rain dissolves metal. Predator creatures hunt anything that moves. Gravity too strong. Atmosphere poison. Council sends species here when they want them gone, but don't want to do killing directly." Jinwoo felt a cold anger building in his chest. The Galactic Council had basically sentenced humanity to death by giving them this sector to explore. But as he looked around the shelter and saw how the Zilani had managed to survive for decades, he realized something important. "You've been surviving here for 47 years, he said. "That means it's possible." The Zilani alien nodded slowly. "Barely possible. We lost many of our people. But Zilani are desert species. We adapt to harsh conditions. Most species die quickly here." Dr. Yunji finished her examination and began treating the aliens' malnutrition with emergency rations from the Aurora. "What other species have been sent here?" "Many," the Zilani replied, seeming to gain strength from the food. "Kalari Exploration Unit sent here 10 cycles ago. All died within 1 cycle. Vorthok Military Base tried to establish foothold on acid. World and Next System. Base dissolved in 3 days." Haeyoung had been studying the alien shelter technology while they talked. "This is remarkable," she said. "You found a way to use the lightning strikes to power your systems. The metal you used actually gets stronger when struck by electricity." "Yes," the Zilani said with something that might have been pride. "We learned to work with planet instead of fighting it. But we are weak species. Cannot do heavy work needed to build better shelter or repair ship." Jinwoo made a decision that would change everything. "We're not leaving you here. Aurora has enough space to take you with us. You would do this." The Zilani's eyes widened with surprise. "We are not your species. Why risk your lives for us?" Dr. Yunji smiled as she continued treating the aliens. "Because that's what humans do. We help those who need help." Over the next few days, the human crew worked to evacuate the Zilani survivors. But more importantly, they began to understand what the Galactic Council had really done. This wasn't just a remote sector. It was a testing ground designed to eliminate species that the Council considered problematic. As they prepared to leave the storm world, Jinwoo looked at the electromagnetic readings one more time. The planet was incredibly hostile, designed to kill anything that tried to survive there. But humans had not only survived the landing, they had thrived in conditions that killed other species. Captain Soman called from her station. "I'm picking up more distress signals from other worlds in the sector." "How many?" Jinwoo asked. "Dozens," she replied. "There are survivors scattered across multiple worlds, all of them trapped in conditions that their species can't handle." Dr. Yunji realized what this meant. The Council has been using this sector as a dumping ground for who knows how long. There could be hundreds of beings out there, abandoned to die. Jinwoo set course for the next distress signal. "Then we'd better get to work." Looks like we have a lot of people to rescue. As the Aurora lifted off from the storm world, none of the humans realized that they had just proven something the Galactic Council had never expected. Humanity wasn't just another species to be eliminated. They were survivors, adapted to thrive in conditions that killed everything else. The hunting grounds had been meant to destroy them. Instead, they were about to become humanity's training ground. The distress signal came from a planet at the edge of their assigned sector. It was weak and broken, but Communications Officer Soman managed to decode enough of it to understand that someone was in serious trouble. The signal had been repeating for 6 months, growing weaker each day. It's a Vorthok military frequency, Soman reported to Captain Jinwoo as the Aurora approached the planet. But the message is strange. It keeps saying surrounded and cannot retreat over and over. Dr. Yoonji looked up from her station where she had been caring for the Zilani survivors they had rescued. The 3 aliens were much healthier now. After weeks of proper food and medical attention, Vorthok are the reptilian species from the Council, right? The ones with the yellow eyes. Yes, Jinwoo replied, studying the planet on their main screen. They're supposed to be one of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy. What could have a Vorthok unit trapped for 6 months? The planet below looked deceptively peaceful. It had green forests, blue oceans, and white clouds drifting across its surface. Unlike the storm world they had just left, this place looked almost like Earth. Atmospheric readings are good, Engineer Hyung reported. Gravity is about 80% of Earth normal. Temperature is comfortable. This actually looks like a nice place to visit. Then what's keeping the Vorthok trapped? Jinwoo wondered aloud. They got their answer as soon as they entered the planet's atmosphere. The Aurora's sensors immediately detected massive lifeforms moving through the forests below. The creatures were huge, each one the size of a building, and they moved in coordinated groups. Those are some big animals, Hyung said with a whistle. What do you think they eat? Dr. Yoonji enhanced the sensor readings and felt her blood run cold. Everything, she said quietly. Captain, those creatures down there are pure predators. Look at the bone density, the muscle structure, the size of their teeth. They're built for one thing only, hunting and killing. The distress signal was coming from a valley surrounded by high cliffs. As they flew over it, they could see a small Vorthok base at the bottom, heavily fortified but clearly under siege. The massive predators surrounded the base completely. And they had been there so long that they had worn paths in the ground from their constant movement. How many Vorthok are down there? Jinwoo asked. So Min worked on boosting the signal. I'm reading 12 life signs. But the base was designed for a full military unit of 50 soldiers. The math was grim. The Vorthok had lost most of their people to these creatures over the past 6 months. Jinwoo made contact with the Vorthok base. The voice that answered was exhausted and desperate. This is Commander Zethkar of the Vorthok 3rd Regiment. Who is this? This is Captain Jinwoo of the human vessel Aurora. We received your distress signal. What's your situation down there? There was a long pause before the Vorthok commander replied. Humans, what are you doing in this sector? Is it Death Zone? We know, Jinwoo said grimly. We're here to help. What are those creatures surrounding your base? Pack hunters, Zethkar replied with obvious fear in his voice. They appeared 6 months ago and have kept us trapped ever since. We call them shadow runners because they hunt at night and move faster than our weapons can track. During the day they rest, but they never leave. They're waiting for us to make a mistake. Dr. Yoonji studied the creatures through the ship's cameras. They were indeed resting now, lying in the shade of the trees around the valley. But even at rest, they kept their heads pointed toward the Vorthok base, watching and waiting. Have you tried to break out? Jinwoo asked. Many times, Zethkar replied bitterly. The first week we lost 20 soldiers trying to fight our way out. These creatures are too fast and too strong. We can kill 1 or 2, but there are always more, and they learn from each attack. They adapt their tactics. Lieutenant Minho, who served as the Aurora's tactical officer, had been listening to the conversation with growing interest. Captain, may I speak with the Vorthok commander? Jinwoo nodded and handed over the communication. Commander this is Lieutenant Minho. I need to ask you some questions about these creatures. How long can they maintain a chase? What do you mean? The Vorthok replied, confusion clear in his voice. If you started running, how long could they follow you before they got tired? These are apex predators. Human, they don't get tired. They can chase prey for hours without stopping. Minho exchanged a look with Jinwoo. Hours, you said, not days. Of course not days. Zethkar replied with exasperation. No creature can run for days. What kind of question is that? Dr. Yoonji suddenly understood what Minho was thinking. Commander, how long can your people run without stopping? Vorthok are sprinters, Zethkar replied proudly. We can reach speeds of 60 kilometers per hour, but we can only maintain that pace for perhaps 20 minutes before we need rest. The humans looked at each other with growing excitement. They were beginning to see a solution that the Vorthok couldn't imagine. Commander, Jinwoo said, we're going to try something, but we need you to trust us. When we give the signal, I want you and your people to leave your base and start running north toward the cliffs. That's suicide, Zethkar protested. The moment we leave the base, those creatures will attack. Yes, they will, Minho agreed. But we need you to keep running no matter what happens. Don't stop, don't fight, just run. Can you do that? For how long? As long as necessary, Dr. Yun said. Ours, if needed. Impossible, Zethkar replied. Vorthok cannot run for hours. We will collapse. Then we'll carry you, Jinwu said simply. But you have to trust us. After much argument, Zethkar finally agreed to try the human plan. Commander Hyansu suited up along with a team of 6 other humans, all of them carrying light equipment and wearing running gear instead of heavy armor. The moment the Vorthok left their base, the Shadow Runners exploded into motion. The massive predators were incredibly fast. Just as Zethkar had warned, they moved like liquid darkness across the ground, their huge forms covering distance with frightening speed. But Hyansu and his team were ready. As the creatures charged toward the fleeing Vorthok, the humans began to run alongside them, not sprinting like the Vorthok, but settling into a steady, sustainable pace that they could maintain for hours. At first, the Shadow Runners easily kept up with their prey, but as the minutes turned into an hour, then 2 hours, something began to change. The massive creatures started to slow down. Their breathing became labored, and their movements less coordinated. The Vorthok were exhausted after the first 30 minutes and would have collapsed if the humans hadn't helped support them. But the humans showed no signs of fatigue. They continued their steady pace, carrying the injured Vorthok when necessary, never stopping or slowing down. This is impossible, Zethkar gasped, as medic Dayun helped him along. How are you still running? This is what humans do, Dayun replied calmly, not even breathing hard after 3 hours of continuous movement. We're persistence hunters. Our ancestors hunted mammoths by running them to death across hundreds of kilometers. By the 4th hour, the Shadow Runners were stumbling with exhaustion. These apex predators, designed to chase down prey in quick bursts of speed, had never encountered anything that could simply outlast them. One by one, they began to fall behind, their massive bodies unable to continue the pursuit. By the 6th hour, the last of the Shadow Runners had given up and turned back toward their territory. The humans had literally run the apex predators into the ground. As they finally stopped to rest at the base of the northern cliffs, Commander Zethkar stared at the human team in shock. None of them were even breathing particularly hard. They looked like they could keep running for another day if necessary. What do you do? He whispered in awe and terror. Commander Hyansu smiled as he helped the exhausted Vorthok sit down. We're just humans, Commander. This is how we've always survived. As they waited for the Aurora to pick them up, Dr. Yunji explained to the shocked Vorthok how human endurance hunting worked. She told them about the ancient humans who could chase animals 4 days across the African savanna, never giving up until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. Your people think in terms of speed and strength, she said, but humans learned long ago that persistence beats both. We might not be the fastest or the strongest, but we never stop coming. Commander Zethkar looked back toward the valley where the Shadow Runners waited. No longer the terrifying apex predators he had feared, but simply tired animals that had met something they couldn't understand. The council needs to know about this, he said quietly. They need to know what humans really are. As the Aurora lifted them away from the planet, none of the Vorthok realized that they had just witnessed humanity's greatest evolutionary advantage. They had seen the reason why humans had become the ultimate predators on Earth, and why they would soon become something the galaxy had never seen before. The rescue mission had changed everything. As the Aurora traveled back toward the central systems with both Solani and Vorthok survivors aboard, the atmosphere inside the ship was unlike anything the humans had expected. Instead of grateful passengers waiting to be dropped off at the nearest safe port, they found themselves hosting something that resembled a family reunion. Engineer Kyung-Soo was in the main cargo bay, teaching one of the young Vorthok soldiers how to repair human technology. The reptilian alien, who had introduced himself as Soldier Verthon, watched with intense focus as Kyung-Soo showed him how to calibrate the ship's atmospheric processors. Your tools are so different from ours, Verthon said, his yellow eyes bright with curiosity. Vorthok technology is built for precision and speed, but human tools seem designed for durability and adaptation. That's because we expect things to break, Kyung-Soo replied with a laugh. On Earth, if something can go wrong, it usually will. So we build everything to be fixable. Dr. Jiwon observed this interaction from across the bay, taking notes on her tablet. As the ship's behavioral analyst, she had been studying the growing relationships between the humans and their alien passengers. What she was seeing defied everything she knew about interspecies contact protocols. It's remarkable, she said to Dr. Yunji as they watched Kyung-Soo and Verthon work together. Look at how naturally they're bonding. Kyung-Soo is treating that Vorthok soldier like a younger brother. Dr. Yunji nodded, equally fascinated by what was happening. The Vorthok seemed just as affected. Commander Zethkar told me yesterday that his people have never experienced anything like this. Vorthok society is built on strict hierarchies and competitive relationships. The idea of helping someone without expecting something in return is completely foreign to them. In the ship's common area, communications officer the Jin was sharing a meal with the Zalani survivors and several Vorthok soldiers. She had somehow managed to find foods that all three species could eat, and the conversation around the table was animated despite the language barriers. On Zalani homeworld, one of the blue-skinned aliens was saying, "We have saying, trust is luxury only. Safe species can afford, but humans give trust freely, even to strangers." Commander Zethkar, who was looking much healthier after weeks of proper food and medical care, shook his massive reptilian head. It makes no tactical sense. In Vorthok military doctrine, trust must be earned through demonstrated competence and loyalty, but these humans risked their lives for us without hesitation. Maybe that's why they're so effective, suggested Medic Dayun as she joined the conversation. Human military units form bonds that go beyond simple cooperation. We fight harder when we're protecting people we care about. Zethkar's voice carried a note of confusion. You mean strategic value? No, Dayun replied gently. I mean emotional attachment. Love, if you want to call it that. We humans tend to adopt people into our family groups, even if they're not related to us by blood. The aliens around the table fell silent. Processing this information, Dr. Jiwan noticed that both the Vorthok and Zalani showed signs of stress when discussing emotional concepts. Their body language suggested they were encountering ideas that didn't exist in their own cultures. The real test of human pack bonding came 3 days later when the ship's proximity alarms began blaring. Navigator Dongmin reported multiple contacts approaching at high speed. "Captain," he called to Jin, "we've got 6 Kalari interceptor ships closing on our position. They're demanding we stop and prepare to be boarded." The Kalari were the insectoid species from the Galactic Council, known for their rigid adherence to regulations and their complete lack of empathy for other species. Their ships were smaller than the Aurora but heavily armed and designed for speed. "What do they want?" Jinwoo asked as he took his position on the bridge. Communications officer Soman worked to decode the incoming transmission. "They're saying we've violated quarantine protocols by removing survivors from the restricted sector. They want to take our passengers back to something called processing centers." The effect on the alien survivors was immediate and terrifying. Both the Vorthok and Zalani began showing signs of extreme panic. Commander Zethkar grabbed Dr. Yunji's arm with his clawed hand. "You cannot let them take us," he said, his voice shaking with fear. "Calorie processing centers are where species go to be eliminated. They will kill us slowly, studying our deaths to improve their biological weapons." One of the Zalani survivors began weeping, a sound that was heartbreaking coming from the normally stoic aliens. "We thought we were safe. We thought humans would protect us." The words hit the human crew like a physical blow. Engineer Kungsu looked at Verthon, the young Vorthok he had been teaching, and felt something fierce and protective surge in his chest. "Captain," he said, his voice hard with determination, "we're not giving them up." "Agreed," Jinwoo replied. Without hesitation, "Somin, send a response to the Kalari ships. Tell them our passengers are under human protection and we will not surrender them." The Kalari response was swift and predictable. "Human vessel, you have no authority in this sector. Surrender the quarantine violators immediately or face the consequences." Lieutenant Minho studied the tactical display showing the approaching ships. 6-to-1 odds. "Captain, their ships are faster and more maneuverable than ours. But they're not expecting us to fight," Jinwoo said grimly. "Kalari think in terms of regulations and proper procedures. They probably assume we'll surrender when faced with superior numbers." What happened next surprised even the humans. As they prepared for battle, they found that their alien passengers wanted to help. Commander Zethkar took a position at one of the weapon stations while the Zalani survivors worked to boost the ship's power systems, using techniques they had learned during their years of survival. "You should stay in the safe areas," Dr. Yunji told them. "This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is," Zethkar replied firmly. "You made it our fight when you chose to protect us. This is what pack loyalty means, isn't it?" The young Vorthok soldier, Verthon, nodded agreement. "Kungsu taught me that human families fight together. We are your family now." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The Kalari ships attacked with their usual precision and coordination, but they weren't prepared for the Aurora's response. Instead of trying to outrun or outgun their attackers, the humans did something completely unexpected. They fought like a pack. Engineer Hae-young coordinated with the Zalani to create power surges that overloaded Kalari sensors. Kyungsu and Verthon worked together to modify the ship's defensive systems, creating electromagnetic pulses that disrupted insectoid navigation systems. The human crew moved with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic, each person anticipating what the others needed without being told. but most importantly, they fought with an intensity that terrified their enemies. When one Kellery ship managed to damage the Aurora's hull near where the alien survivors were sheltering, the human response was immediate and overwhelming. They didn't just defend themselves, they attacked with a fury that spoke of protecting family. The Kellery had never encountered anything like it. Their military doctrine was based on individual efficiency and following orders. They had no concept of the kind of emotional bonds that drove human combat effectiveness. Within an hour, 3 Kellery ships were disabled and the other 3 were retreating at maximum speed. The Aurora had taken damage, but everyone aboard was safe. As the crew worked to repair their ship, Dr. Jiwon continued her observations of the human-alien interactions. What she was seeing went beyond simple cooperation or even friendship. The humans had genuinely adopted the Vorthok and Zelani into their social group, and the aliens were responding by adopting human behaviors and values. It's pack bonding, she explained to Captain Jinwoo as they watched Kungsu and Verthan work together to fix a damaged power coupling. Humans evolved as social hunters who formed permanent emotional attachments to their group members. But we don't limit those attachments to our own species. Is that normal? Jinwoo asked. For humans, yes, but for the galaxy, Dr. Ji-won shook her head. I don't think anything like this has ever happened before. We're not just making allies or trading partners. We're literally creating multi-species families. Navigator Dongmin looked up from his star charts with a worried expression. Captain, we've got a problem. Those Kellery ships that escaped are heading straight for Nexus Prime. They're going to report what happened here. Let them, Jinwoo said firmly. The Galactic Council needs to understand something. Humans don't abandon family, and our family just got a lot bigger. As the Aurora continued its journey, word of the battle spread through the restricted sector. Other survivors, beings who had been abandoned to die on impossible worlds, began to hope for the first time in years. The humans hadn't just rescued a few individuals, they had proven that someone in the galaxy still remembered what loyalty meant. The pack was growing, and the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. News traveled fast in the galactic communication networks. Within days of the Aurora's battle with the Kellery interceptors, every major species in the Galactic Council knew that humans had openly defied quarantine protocols and defeated a superior force to protect refugees from the restricted sectors. On the Kellery homeworld of Ziptar, Hive Queen Calandra called an emergency meeting with her war council. The massive insectoid ruler sat in her chamber surrounded by dozens of smaller Kellery, all of them buzzing with agitation and fear. Explain to me again how 6 of our interceptors were defeated by a single human vessel, she demanded, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights like fractured mirrors. War leader Kunter stepped forward, his forearms trembling slightly. The humans fought with tactics we have never encountered. Hive Queen, they showed no regard for standard military doctrine. Instead of attempting to escape or negotiate, they attacked with what can only be described as irrational fury. Irrational, the Hive Queen's voice carried a dangerous edge. Or simply incomprehensible to our way of thinking. They appeared to be protecting the quarantine violators with the same intensity that Killar protect the hive. Kunter admitted, reluctantly, but these were not their genetic offspring or even their species. It makes no evolutionary sense. Dr. Yoonji would have found the conversation fascinating if she could have heard it. Back aboard the Aurora, she was conducting her own research into galactic history, trying to understand why the aliens seemed so frightened of basic human behaviors. I've been going through the historical databases we received from the Council, she told Captain Jinwoo as they reviewed her findings, and I'm starting to see a pattern that's very disturbing. Jinwoo looked up from the reports he had been writing about their recent encounters. What kind of pattern? Every species in the current Galactic Council evolved from prey animals, Dr. Yoonji said, pulling up star charts and biological data on her screen. The Vorthok are descended from reptiles that were hunted by massive aerial predators. The Kellery evolved from insects that lived in constant fear of being eaten by larger creatures. The Zelani come from desert scavengers that survived by hiding and running. And the predators? Jinwoo asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. All extinct, Dr. Yoonji replied grimly. According to these records, every single apex predator species in the galaxy died out or was eliminated millions of years ago. The current civilizations only arose after their hunters were gone. Scientist Sung-ho, who had been analyzing archaeological data from several worlds they had visited, joined their conversation with his own disturbing discoveries. It wasn't natural extinction, he reported, his voice tense with the implications of what he had found. I've been studying ruins on the worlds where we've rescued survivors. There's evidence of deliberate extermination campaigns. The prey species formed alliances specifically to hunt down and eliminate their predators. The 3 humans sat in silence as they processed this information. The galaxy they had entered wasn't ruled by the strongest or most advanced species. It was controlled by the survivors of a massive genocide that had eliminated every creature that hunted for survival. That explains their reaction to us, Dr. Yoonji said finally. We're not just another species seeking membership in their club. We're living proof that apex predators can develop intelligence and technology. We're their worst nightmare come to life. Jinwoo agreed. No wonder they sent us to the restricted sectors. They were hoping we'd die quietly so they wouldn't. I have to deal with the reality of what we represent. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just different from the galactic community. They were the return of something that had been deliberately eliminated from the galaxy millions of years ago. On the Vorthok homeworld, Council leader Veltar was having his own crisis of understanding as he reviewed reports from the restricted sectors. The humans had not only survived the death worlds where they had been sent, they were actively rescuing other species and building alliances. This is unprecedented, he told his advisors, his yellow eyes reflecting deep concern. No species has ever thrived in the restricted sectors. The humans should have died within months. Perhaps we underestimated their technological capabilities, suggested one of his military commanders. No, Veltar replied, studying video feeds from the Aurora's rescue missions. Look at how they move, how they think. This isn't about technology. These beings think like predators. They hunt, they track, they never give up pursuit of their goals. What are you suggesting? The commander asked nervously. I'm suggesting that we may have made the greatest mistake in galactic history, Veltar said quietly. We've awakened something that our ancestors spent millions of years trying to eliminate. Back on the Aurora, the multi-species crew had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Humans, Vorthok, and Zilani worked together with a coordination that seemed impossible to outside observers. But Dr. Jiwan understood what was really happening. We're watching the birth of the first multi-species pack in galactic history, she explained to the assembled crew during one of their regular briefings. Humans naturally form pack bonds that extend beyond species barriers. But what's remarkable is how quickly the other species are adapting to this behavior. Commander Zethkar, who had become an unofficial leader among the rescued aliens, nodded agreement. Vorthok society has always been based on individual achievement and competition, but working with humans has shown us the power of genuine cooperation. We are becoming something new. One of the Zilani survivors, an elderly alien named Welkus, spoke up from where he sat with several human crew members. On our world, we had legends of the time before, when great hunters ruled the stars. We thought they were myths. But now we understand, humans are the return of the ancient apex predators. The words sent a chill through everyone present. The aliens weren't just talking about humans as another species. They were describing them as the return of something legendary, something that had once ruled the galaxy. Dr. Yunji realized that they needed to understand more about this ancient history. Welkas, do your people have more detailed records of these legends? Some, the Zilani replied. Hidden archives that our ancestors preserved. They spoke of great hunters who could track prey across star systems, who formed bonds stronger than blood, who never abandoned their pack members. And what happened to them? Jinwoo asked. The Great Alliance, Waka said, his voice dropping to a whisper. All the prey species united to eliminate the apex predators. It was the only way to survive. But the legends warned that someday, the hunters would return. The humans looked at each other with growing understanding. They weren't just exploring a galaxy full of alien civilizations. They were walking into a community built on the foundation of their own species' destruction. So what do we do? Asked engineer, HAE-Young. Captain Jinwoo stood up, his expression determined. We do what humans have always done. We protect our pack, we help those who need help, and we prove that apex predators can be more than just killers. But, Captain, Commander Zethkar said with concern, the Galactic Council will not accept this. They will see humans as an existential threat. They may try to eliminate your species before you become too powerful. Jinwoo smiled, and for the first time, the alien survivors understood why prey species had once feared creatures like humans. It wasn't a cruel or vicious expression, but it carried the absolute confidence of a predator who had never learned to fear anything. Let them try, he said simply. They've forgotten what it means to face a true apex predator. But they're about to remember, as the Aurora continued its journey through the restricted sectors, rescuing more survivors and building an ever-growing multi-species alliance. The Galactic Council began to realize the magnitude of their mistake. They had tried to eliminate humanity quietly, but instead, they had given them time to discover the truth about galactic history and to build unbreakable bonds with the survivors of their own genocidal past. The apex predators had returned to the galaxy, and this time they came not as solitary hunters, but as pack leaders of a growing coalition that included members of every species the Council had tried to eliminate. The galaxy was about to change forever. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recorded history. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great chamber of Nexus Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of fear and anger that echoed off the metal walls. At the center of it all, Council leader Veltar struggled to maintain order. The human situation has become untenable, declared the Kellery Hive Queen through her representative. They have openly defied quarantine protocols. destroyed council vessels, and are actively recruiting from the restricted sectors. This cannot be allowed to continue. Admiral Wu Jin received the recall order while the Aurora was docked at a makeshift space station that the rescued survivors had built in an asteroid field. The message was brief and direct. All human vessels were to return to Earth immediately and cease all activities in Galactic Council space. They're trying to cut us off, he said to Captain Jinwoo as they reviewed the order together. If we comply, we abandon everyone we've rescued. If we refuse, we're officially in violation of galactic law. Jinwoo looked out at the bustling activity around their improvised base. Humans worked alongside Vorthok Zalani and members of a dozen other species they had rescued from the Death Worlds. The sight filled him with pride and determination. Send a response to Earth Command, he said firmly. Tell them we're staying. Our pack needs us here. Admiral Wu Jin raised an eyebrow. You're willing to defy direct orders from Earth. These people trusted us to protect them. Jinwoo replied. I won't abandon them just because some politicians are afraid of making the council angry. The decision spread quickly through the human crews scattered across the restricted sectors. One by one, ship captains chose to stay with their alien allies rather than return to Earth. Within days, humanity had its first official military mutiny. An entire fleet refusing orders to protect the families they had adopted. Tactical officer, Young Soo understood better than most what they were facing. He had been studying council military doctrine and found it deeply flawed from a strategic perspective. They think like prey animals, he explained to the other human officers during a strategy meeting. Their entire military philosophy is based on defensive thinking and resource protection. They build strong positions and wait for threats to come to them. And that's bad because, asked Lieutenant Minho, because predators don't think defensively. Yang Su replied with a grin. We hunt, we stalk, we attack where the enemy doesn't. Expect us to be their military minds literally cannot comprehend how we approach warfare. Dr. Subin had been studying the psychological profiles of various council species, and her findings supported Young Su's analysis. Prey species, evolution, creates certain mental blind spots, she reported. They excel at pattern recognition and threat detection, but they struggle with creative problem-solving and improvisation. They expect threats to follow predictable behaviors. So we don't follow predictable behaviors, Ginwoo said simply. The Council's first attempt to contain the human rebellion came in the form of an economic blockade. They cut off all trade routes to the restricted sectors and declared any ship caught supplying the human alliance to be in violation of galactic law. The blockade lasted exactly 3 weeks. Pilot Jae Hyun led the mission that broke it, using tactics. That left Council forces completely bewildered. Instead of trying to fight through the blockade lines, human ships began appearing in supposedly secure Council systems, conducting lightning raids on supply depots and communication stations. How are they getting past our sensor networks? Demanded a frustrated Kellery commander. After the 6th successful raid in as many days, the answer was both simple and terrifying to prey-minded species. Humans were using hunting tactics in space warfare. They moved in small groups, struck without warning, and disappeared before defenders could respond. They didn't try to hold territory or follow established shipping lanes. They hunted like pack predators, striking where the prey was weakest and most vulnerable. But the real shock came when Council forces tried to retaliate. They sent a battle fleet to attack the human base in the asteroid field, expecting to find a fixed defensive position that they could overwhelm with superior numbers. Instead, they found empty space and a recorded message. Greetings, Captain Jinwoo's voice echoed through the Council fleet's communication systems. If you're listening to this, it means you've found our old base. Don't worry, we've moved somewhere safer. But since you've come all this way, we thought we'd give you something to remember us by. The asteroid field exploded. The humans had hollowed out dozens of asteroids and filled them with improvised explosives. When the Council fleet moved into attack formation, they triggered a chain reaction that crippled half their ships and sent the survivors fleeing in panic. This is impossible, Council leader Veltar said as he reviewed the battle reports. No species fights like this. Where are their supply lines? How are they coordinating without fixed bases? What is their strategic objective? His military advisors had no answers because they were asking the wrong questions. They were trying to understand human tactics using pre-animal logic. But humans weren't fighting to control territory or protect resources. They were fighting to protect their pack, and that meant they could be anywhere, strike from any direction, and disappear into the vastness of space whenever they chose. The psychological impact on Council forces was devastating. Soldiers who had never known fear began to panic at shadows. Supply convoys required massive escorts that still couldn't guarantee safe passage. Entire sectors were abandoned because commanders were afraid of human ambushes. Dr. Subin documented the effect in her reports. Prey species psychology breaks down when faced with an unpredictable predator. Their survival instincts tell them, to flee or hide, but they can't do either because they don't know where the threat is coming from. The final blow to Council morale came when humans began recruiting directly from Council military units. Soldiers who had been sent to fight the human rebellion found themselves fascinated by human tactics and camaraderie. Some began to defect, drawn by the promise of belonging to something larger than themselves. "They're stealing our people," complained a Vorthok general during an emergency council session. "Entire units are abandoning their posts to join the human alliance." "How is that possible?" demanded the Kellari representative. "Pack bonding," Ambassador Tejo explained via communication link from the human base. He had arrived from Earth with a small diplomatic team, officially to negotiate a ceasefire but actually to coordinate with the growing human alliance. Humans naturally form family bonds with anyone who fights beside them. "Your soldiers aren't defecting, they're being adopted." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans weren't just militarily superior, they were changing the fundamental nature of how species interacted with each other. The rigid hierarchies and competitive relationships that had dominated galactic civilization for millions of years were being replaced by something unprecedented: genuine cooperation across species lines. "What do you want?" Council leader Veltar asked finally, his voice heavy with defeat. "Recognition," Ambassador Tejo replied simply. "Not just for humanity, but for all the species you've tried to eliminate in your restricted sectors. Full council membership for every survivor we've rescued. And if we refuse," Tejo's smile carried the quiet confidence of a predator who held all the advantages, "then we continue what we're doing. We rescue more survivors, recruit more allies, and gradually teach the galaxy what it means to be part of a real family." Instead of a collection of competing interests, the council leaders looked at each other with growing desperation. They were faced with a choice between accepting the return of apex predators to galactic civilization or watching their entire social structure collapse as more and more species abandoned the old ways in favor of human pack dynamics. "You're asking us to fundamentally change everything about how our civilization works," Veltar said. Yastejo replied without hesitation. "Because the way you've been doing things is based on fear and the elimination of anyone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of acceptable behavior. We're offering something better." As the council debate raged on, the human alliance continued to grow. More ships arrived from Earth, bringing colonists and supplies to the expanding network of bases in the restricted sectors. The galaxy was rapidly dividing into two camps: those who clung to the old prey species hierarchy, and those who embraced the new pack bonding relationships that humans offered. The predators had returned, but they hadn't come as conquerors. They had come as teachers, showing the galaxy what it meant to truly care for one another across the boundaries of species and biology. The question now was whether the old powers would accept this lesson, or whether they would force humanity to demonstrate just how dangerous apex predators could be when their pack was threatened. The warning came from the outer edge of the galaxy, where automated monitoring stations had detected something that made even the most advanced artificial intelligences pause in calculation. Long-range sensors showed a massive object moving through the void between galaxies, headed directly toward their spiral arm at impossible speeds. Dr. Yunji was the first to analyze the incoming data aboard the Aurora, which had become the unofficial flagship of the Human Alliance. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Captain, you need to see this," she called to Jinwoo, her voice tight with concern. The main screen showed a creature that defied easy description. It was the size of a small moon, with a dark, organic surface covered in what looked like feeding tendrils that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. But most terrifying of all, it wasn't alone. Sensor readings detected thousands of similar entities following behind the first one, moving in perfect formation through the emptiness between stars. "What are we looking at?" Jinwoo asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer wouldn't be pleasant. "Planet eaters," Dr. Yunji replied grimly. "The computer has identified them from ancient records. They're creatures that consume entire worlds, breaking down all matter into energy to fuel their reproduction. According to these files, they appear in the galaxy every few million years." Communications Officer Soman looked up from her station with growing alarm. "Captain, I'm receiving priority transmissions from Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council is calling for an immediate emergency session." The emergency session was chaos from the moment it began. Council Leader Veltar's normally composed demeanor had cracked, and his yellow eyes showed genuine terror as he addressed the assembled representatives. "The Planet Eater swarm is 3 months away from the outer systems," he announced to the packed chamber. "Our military analysts estimate they will consume every inhabited world in the galaxy within 2 years." Panicked voices erupted throughout the chamber as representatives demanded to know what defenses could be prepared. The Kellari military commander stood to address the assembly. "Our combined fleets number over 10,000 vessels," War Leader Kantor reported, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. "But our weapons are ineffective against Planet Eater biology. They absorb energy attacks and their outer shells are impervious to kinetic weapons." "What about evacuation?" called out a Zilani representative. To where Veltar replied bitterly. These creatures travel between galaxies. There is nowhere to run that they won't eventually reach. Ambassador Tejo had been listening to the debate from the human delegation area, and now he stood to address the council. The chamber fell silent as attention focused on the representative of the species, that most of them still considered a dangerous threat. Have you tried hunting them? He asked simply. The question seemed to confuse the assembled aliens. Hunting, Veltar repeated. These are not prey animals. They are living planets that consume everything in their path. Everything is prey to something, Tejo replied calmly. The question is whether you're willing to think like predators instead of prey. War leader Kunter buzzed with agitation. Human, you don't understand the scale of what we're facing. Individual planet eaters are larger than our biggest warships. How do you hunt something that can swallow your attack force whole? The same way our ancestors hunted mammoths, Dr. Yunji said as she joined the discussion. With patience, coordination, and the willingness to take casualties for the good of the pack. The aliens in the chamber shifted uncomfortably at the mention of taking casualties. Prey species evolution had programmed them to prioritize individual survival above all else. The idea of deliberately sacrificing some members to save others was almost incomprehensible to them. What are you proposing? Veltar asked reluctantly. Commander Hyansu stepped forward, his expression grim but determined. A hunting pack. Multi-species crews on fast attack vessels, working together to bring down the largest threats in the swarm. That's suicide, protested a Vorthok military officer. The Planet Eater's defensive systems will destroy any ship that gets close enough to cause meaningful damage. Yes, Hyansu agreed matter-of-factly. Some of us will die. Maybe most of us. But that's what apex predators do. We take risks that prey species won't take, because the survival of the pack is more important than individual survival. The chamber erupted in shocked voices as the aliens processed what the human commander was suggesting. They were talking about willingly sending people to their deaths, something that went against every evolutionary instinct the council species possessed. But as the debate raged, something remarkable began to happen. Commander Zethkar stood up from where he had been sitting with the rescued survivors. I volunteer, the Vorthok officer announced, his voice carrying across the chamber. My people were saved by humans who risked their lives for strangers. It's time we learned to do the same. One by one, other voices joined him. Zilani survivors, rescued Kalari dissidents, members of species that had been written off as extinct by the council. They were all volunteering for what amounted to a suicide mission, following the example of the humans who had taught them what pack loyalty meant. Dr. Subin watched the proceedings with fascination and growing hope. It's working, she whispered to Dr. Yunji. They're learning to think like predators instead of prey. The mission that followed was the largest military operation in galactic history. Hundreds of small, fast ships crewed by multi-species teams launched toward the advancing Planet Eater swarm. The tactics they used had been developed by human hunting instincts and adapted for space warfare. Instead of trying to destroy the Planet Eaters directly, the hunting packs focused on disrupting their coordination. They targeted the neural networks that connected the creatures, severing the links that allowed the swarm to move as a unified force. Pilot Jay Hyan led one of the most dangerous missions, diving his ship directly into the feeding tendrils of a massive planet eater to plant explosives in its sensory organs. His last transmission was typically human in its casual bravery. Target acquired. Tell my pack I did good. The explosion blinded the creature and sent it careening off course, where it collided with two others in a chain reaction that destroyed a significant portion of the swarm's left flank. But the real turning point came when the Planet Eater Queen, the massive creature at the center of the swarm, found itself facing something it had never encountered before. Commander Hyansu led the final assault, taking a mixed crew of humans and aliens directly into the creature's core. The mission was a success, but at a cost that would have been unthinkable to the old Galactic Council. Nearly half of the hunting pack ships were destroyed, and hundreds of beings from dozens of species died in the assault, but they had done something that seemed impossible. The Planet Eater Queen was dead, and without her guiding intelligence, the remaining swarm began to break apart and drift aimlessly through space. Individual creatures continued to pose threats, but the organized consumption of the galaxy had been stopped. In the aftermath of the battle, something unprecedented happened at Nexus Prime. The great chamber of the Galactic Council fell completely silent as Ambassador Tejo stood to address the assembled representatives, but this time, he wasn't speaking as a supplicant seeking membership. He was speaking as the representative of the species that had just saved galactic civilization. For millions of years, your civilizations have been built on a foundation of fear, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Fear of predators, fear of competition, fear of anything that didn't fit your narrow definition of acceptable behavior. Council leader Veltar listened with the attention of someone who had just watched everything he believed about the universe proven wrong. Around the chamber, representatives from species that had once considered humans a dangerous threat now looked at them with something approaching awe. You tried to eliminate us quietly, hoping we would die in your restricted sectors, Taeho continued. Instead, you gave us time to discover the truth about galactic history and to build alliances with the survivors of your past genocides. Dr. Yunji stepped forward to address the scientific implications of what had happened. The planet eaters operate on pure predator instinct. Your prey species' military doctrines were completely ineffective against them because you've forgotten how to think like hunters. Only by learning to embrace your predator heritage were you able to develop effective tactics. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The species that the Council had feared and tried to eliminate were the only ones capable of saving them from an existential threat. What happens now? Asked a Zilani representative, voicing the question that everyone was thinking. Captain Jinwoo spoke from his position among the human delegation. Now we build something better. A galaxy where species work together as a family instead of competing. For dominance, where the strong protect the weak instead of eliminating them. You're talking about fundamental changes to our entire civilization, Beltar said slowly. Yes, Ambassador Taeho replied without hesitation. Because your civilization was built on a lie. You told yourselves that apex predators were dangerous monsters that had to be destroyed for the galaxy to be safe. But when real monsters threatened your existence, it was predator instincts and predator courage that saved you. Commander Zethkar, who had survived the final assault on the planet Eater Queen, stood to address his fellow council members. I have fought beside humans for months now. I have seen what they truly are. They are not monsters, they are protectors. They risk everything for their pack, and their pack includes anyone willing to stand with them. One by one, other survivors of the hunting packs stood to share their experiences. Kellari soldiers spoke of learning human teamwork. Zilani engineers described the joy of being truly accepted by a group. Vorthok warriors explained how fighting for something larger than themselves had given their lives new meaning. Dr. G documented everything, understanding that they were witnessing the birth of a new form of galactic civilization. Pack bonding is becoming the new foundation of interspecies relations. She noted the old hierarchies based on technological advancement or military power are being replaced by relationships based on loyalty and mutual protection. The formal vote was almost unnecessary when Ambassador Taeho finally presented humanity's demands: full council membership for all rescued species, abandonment of the restricted sectors, and fundamental changes to how the galaxy approached interspecies relations. The response was unanimous approval, but the real change wasn't happening in the council chambers. Throughout the galaxy, species that had spent millions of years in rigid hierarchies were discovering what it meant to be part of a true family. Human ship crews were being invited to establish permanent bases in council systems. Alien volunteers were requesting assignment to human vessels. The boundaries between species were beginning to blur as pack bonds replaced political alliances. Months later, Dr. Yunji stood on the observation deck of the new human embassy at Nexus Prime, watching the traffic patterns around the massive station. Human ships moved freely among alien vessels, their crews working together with a coordination that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Any regrets? Captain Jinwoo asked as he joined her at the viewport. About what? She replied. About changing the galaxy forever. About ending millions of years of established civilization. About proving that everything they believed about predators was wrong. Dr. Yunji smiled as she watched a mixed crew of humans and aliens working together to repair a damaged Vorthok freighter. Look at them, she said. Really, look. Do you see fear, competition, the constant vigilance of prey animals watching for threats? Jinwoo followed her gaze and saw what she meant. The aliens working alongside the humans moved with confidence and purpose. They laughed together, shared meals, and showed genuine concern for each other's welfare. They had learned to trust in a way their species had never known before. No, he said finally, I see family. That's what apex predators really are, Dr. Yunji said softly. Not killers or monsters, but the ultimate expression of what it means to care for others. We hunt not for the joy of killing, but for the protection of our pack, and our pack has no limits. As if to prove her point, a young Kellari technician floated past the viewport, laughing as a human engineer showed her a new way to calibrate atmospheric processors. The insectoid being that would once have fled in terror from anything resembling a predator was now learning from one of Earth's most effective hunters. The galaxy needed to remember what it felt like to be protected instead of just surviving. Jinwoo observed. We didn't conquer them, we adopted them. Dr. Yunji nodded, watching as more mixed crews worked together throughout the station. And that, she said, is what makes humans the true alpha predators. Not because we're the strongest or the most dangerous, but because we're the only species that turns enemies into family and makes everyone else want to be part of our pack. The galaxy had learned to fear apex predators millions of years ago, Now they were learning something far more powerful, what it meant to be loved by one. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating the planet eaters or forcing the council to accept them. It was teaching an entire galaxy that predators and prey could become something greater than either had ever been alone. They had become a family that spanned the stars.